Okay, and I'm going to keep you guys live maybe. I'm just going to mute the sound only because if somebody else can. Okay, so I won't do that. Okay, so anyway, so for those people here, today is January 20th of 2016. We're talking about stuff on the making sales or excuses. I was just going to get off on a nice little tangent. And what I mean by a nice little tangent, I know we talk about our little people toolbox as a quick thing for you to learn, and we talk about icebreakers, which is something you want to learn. And then I have also my KISC, K-I-S-C principle. So my keep it simple circle principle. Let me find a better pen. Hold on one second. Choose pen color, pink. So my keep it simple circle. I know Jean-Luc is on the phone, so it's hard to see what I'm drawing here when you're on the phone, but this is really super simple to be able to draw. Okay. And my keep it simple circle was used by me as a creative way to help keep my people focused, because salespeople are a creative bunch, which is good, but sometimes they move in so many different directions, they try different things, and if they lose their focus, there's that blend between the focus and the productivity and all those types of things. So I had a guy named Ron, and his last name was Gadson, G-A-D-S-O-N, and Ron was a good guy. Now, I paint pictures in people's minds perhaps, but Ron was a black guy, and he was a skinny guy, and he was older than me, but he was nice and respectful, and he was one of the first guys that I had ever hired, I think, in my Joliet, Illinois office. So Ron was a good guy. He was kind of cool. So if you almost think like Sammy Davis Jr., he was like Sammy but with two eyes. So like that worked. So Ron's kind of like a cool guy. And he was a thinker, but he would think his way out of working. So I would just grab Ron and we'd go knocking on doors. And he had an average approach, but he was a nice guy, so sometimes he got in. And he wasn't really a hard closer. So many times he'd close people because he was nice and he did a nice demonstration and they liked him. So he wasn't really a hard closer guy. But there was one day where he had fallen on some hard times. He never had made a lot of money. He had fallen on some hard times, and he had come back to work for me. Because if if you're in sales and you're on commission sales only, you're not going to necessarily make a lot of money if you're not making a lot of sales. So he wound up doing something else, I suppose, and I don't remember all the details now. But he came back to me, and I said, Ron, I really need you to rise to the level that I need you to rise to, because we're going to have a really big month, and I need you to have 50 sales. Now, 50 sales for the month for Ron. Ron wouldn't make 50 sales for the year, let alone 50 sales in a month. But I would say, I really need to focus you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to design this keep it simple circle, because, everybody knows the KISS principle, keep it simple. Salesperson, K-I-S-S is the standard thing that people sometimes talk about. I said, Ron, but the problem is that we don't apply it. So if you're not applying it, then it can't really work for you. So I said, we have to really stay focused. So I drew this big circle, and this circle represented the activities and the perimeter of the activities that we had to stay in. And then I said, now what we're going to do is we're going to draw two stick figures that have no face on them just yet. But we're going to draw one of those stick figures inside the circle, and then we're going to draw the same stick figure outside the circle. So imagine if you could draw them kind of like exactly the same kind of. I said, Ron, we're going to figure out the activities that we need to do well on without getting distracted. So door knocking is going to be one of them. Ringing the phones is going to be another one. Getting referrals is going to be another one. We're going to focus on the basics. Vince Lombardi always said, become brilliant on the basics. This is a football kind of a thing. So we're going to figure out which activities we need to focus on, because I'm getting tired of you coming to me and saying, hey, I got an idea. And I don't want to be poo-pooing your ideas, but this month, Ron, we need you to get 50 sales, and I know how to get a sale. So if we know how to get a sale, we can get 50 of them, but we're not going to get 50 of them with your shoot the moon projects and your crazy, Ed Norton, Ralph Cramden, goofy kind of things. Like, we just need to stay focused. So he kind of agreed, and I said, we're going to design this way to be able to think this stuff through. So when we're inside our Keep It Simple circle of activities, so remember, I got a circle with a guy drawn in there with no face so far, and same guy drawn outside the circle with no face so far. I said, Ron, when we're inside our Keep It Simple circle, we're going to be the most successful. So I said, we have to draw a big S that fills up most of the space inside that circle. So big S, that stands for success. Now, success in sales can, of course, be certainly judged by money. So we can put dollar signs in there, but, success is whatever our definition of success is. Screw the world. What really matters is your definition of your success, because you live your life. I don't live your life. You live your life. So we're going to use your definition of success, and I'm going to have mine. But when we're inside our Keep It Simple circle, I know that we will do well. So we'll focus on the activities that are going to give us the results. Now, when we're outside our Keep It Simple circle, we're going to have the least level of success. Those harebrained schemes, trying to figure out this and do this and do this and all those other types of things that are otherwise distractions. And that's when we're going to have our smallest level of success. So let's draw a really teeny-weeny S next to the guy who's outside the circle. And because that's his least level of success, we might as well draw that money sign in there as well on that S, because he's also making the least amount of money. And Ron, now let's put faces on these. The guy inside the circle who's focused on the activities, getting the best results, making the most money, we're going to give him the two little beady eyes and a little nose, and we're going to give him a big smile, because he's happiest when he's inside his Keep It Simple circle and he's making the most money. Now, Ron, I said to Ron, we're going to draw the two beady eyes on the guy on the outside. We're going to draw the little beady nose, and we're going to draw a big frown on the guy outside to Keep It Simple circle. Why? Because he's the least successful and he's making the least amount of money. And I said, Ron, here's the genius behind this. We can scribble this on a napkin at Denny's. When we go to McDonald's, we can grab a napkin and I can say, Ron, let's remember the Keep It Simple circle. So we can scribble this down on a pad of paper. We can scribble it anywhere. I mean, we can write it in the snow if we wanted to. We can grab a kid's chalk and do it on the sidewalk. We can remember this for the rest of our lives. So the next time, so here's a lesson. So the next time you come to me with one of your thoughts, I'm going to ask one question. Where is it? Where are we in the Keep It Simple circle? Are we inside or are we outside? Because if it's inside this Keep It Simple circle, let's do it. If it's outside the Keep It Simple circle, then let's not. And at least this way we can say no and be okay with that because we're focused. So that was the evolution of the Keep It Simple circle. So sometimes the people that challenge you the most, the dumbest ones, the stubborn, like I don't want to say this and not sound very kind, but some of the reasons why I can give some, I think, the best stuff on the planet is because I've been so friggin' frustrated with how stupid people are. And I say this with great love and affection, but frustration. Like, I gotta dumb this down so you idiots, I say this playfully, right? But you, like, what's wrong? Like, how do I do this? Like, there is a sole purpose in life for people being as dumb as they are. Sometimes it is only to frustrate me so much that I have to come up with something so simple that it's, I'm going to playfully use the word genius. Like, oh my God, I had to explain it in a way that even she could learn it. So and that was really weird because I would always be very frustrated, and even sometimes still today when I'm trying to explain something, I'm like, how can you be not so getting it? Like, and then, you know, I'm nice and polite and all that sort of stuff, but gosh, what? And then pissed off at myself, like, what do I have to do to make this so simple? And that's where the genius, I think, comes from it, because that's when we came out with the Little People Toolbox and the icebreakers and everything else like that, plus my little KISC, K-I-S-C principles. So that's my Keep It Simple circle. So your life is going to be trying to figure out what are those activities that you need to fulfill to make sure you're staying in your little Keep It Simple circle. Now, here's what happened. Of course, I started using this. And, you know, Ron, believe it or not, Ron and I had a great month. The month that we were referencing, I really needed him to hit his 50. I don't remember how many he had specifically, so give me a little bit of wiggle room on the accuracy, but it was more than 50. I don't remember if it was 51 or 55 or 52 or whatever it was, but he hit his goal for 50. He made a lot of money. I worked him to the bone. He was that skinny little black guy who got way skinnier by the time I was finished with him. And Ming the Merciless, like, I dragged him out, and we did everything that we had to do. I kind of beat him up a little bit, and I say that playfully. But I said, listen, I'm not going to fail on your terms. You're not going to fail on mine. We're going to hit those numbers. And I needed to, because I had just taken over a relatively new office that was in shambles, and I had to do whatever I had to do for myself and my family and the rest of the division. And I don't remember which month it was, whether it was a $40,000 a month in earnings that I made or a $60,000 a month in earnings that I made for that month. But I needed him to hit his 50 because we trained a couple of guys along the way. We developed our next line of branch managers. We actually got a couple of good guys out of the thing and actually helped me build that branch. So I was totally focused, and I really applied all the principles that I'm using right here, my Keep It Simple circle. So as it started to expand and I started to work with everybody, here's what I started to hear. Hey, Peter, they would say, yeah, you'd be proud of me. I said, I know, but why? And they said, tell me why. You know, tell me why. Why would I be proud of you? And they would say, because I had blah, blah, blah happen. And I asked myself, is it in my Keep It Simple circle? And it wasn't. And I said, nope, I am doing it. And I felt good about it. I felt good about it because I knew that I was focused. So I said, well, that's really cool. So then we would always go around asking, so is it inside your circle? Is it in your circle? Because if it ain't in your circle, then it don't matter. So when we would say it's in your circle, like, you had to be cult-like to understand what that really meant. But we knew what it meant. So it was like, you know, we were talking like slangs, like, you know, blah, 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 but it wasn't in my circle, and everybody knew what we were talking about. Like, if you didn't know what we were talking about, like, oh. So that's what I mean by the jargon, if you will, of sometimes the culture of when you learn these types of things. When somebody says, you know, I was thinking about doing this, but it wasn't really my circle, and you don't really know what that means. Well, now you do. So it's in the Keep It Simple circle. Now, the challenge, of course, is that your little circle is going to expand, and the wisdom, of course, is knowing when to expand it and how, because you don't want to keep yourself limited. You always kind of want to expand your circle, but you have to really watch. Probably expanding it too far is worse than expanding it too slowly, because if you just focus on those things, like when you were in sales, if you only focused on knocking on doors, if you only focused on a good approach, if you only focused on like how to do a better demo, and you only focused on how to ask for the order, you know, help people make decisions. If those are the only things you really mastered, you'd be so far ahead of everybody else. Like, that's it. Like, that's all we really needed to do, and we just do a lot of it and all over again. So, you know, multiply it by 5, and you don't have to do anything else. If you're in sales, that's how simple sometimes sales are. So that was my little Keep It Simple circle. Now, I'm going to go over here and then contradict myself, because I started with the suspicious observers thing. There's a certain time where I say, okay, I understand this is like most of my activities, this Keep It Simple circle stuff when I'm building a business, but I also, I want to expand, and I want to use the good old LSFSWB. I had to come up with that. So I had to make that up. LSFSWB, because what I found was sometimes I was looking for something, that's the LS, and then I FS'd, I found something else, and that something else actually worked better. So I needed to be creative enough to be able to explore other things. So I love the creative part, but it's got to be controlled, because otherwise you get fractured and you get scattered all over the place, and it's real easy to have this wandering generality. But I do love to play. So one day, I was doing something, and I don't remember the exact thing, but I was thinking about, and that's what Google is so good for, so let me give you that little tangent. So I was thinking about something, and it was about climate change. Because, you know, the next conspiracy and the next big scam, of course, is climate change. The idea that, you know, $1 trillion of somebody's economy is going to have something to do with the Earth. And say, you know, these guys, they're blaming all this stuff on man-made stuff. And, yeah, who wants to pollute the ocean? Who, you know, you shouldn't be burning stuff. Oh, yeah, we get it, you know, fossil fuel, you know, aerosol spray cans, all this other stuff. Yeah, I get it. But is there anything else that might be warming up the planet? Like, could there be anything else? Like maybe that big burning thing that's like 93 million miles away, like the sun? And I was also doing some stuff relative to electromagnetic pulses, EMPs. So you know the idea that, you know, hey, one of these like massive coronal ejections, CMEs, could just kind of like blow out all the electricity. So I started to do some Googling of sun, solar flares, climate control, and I came up with this website. And it's suspiciousobservers.org. You can even do like a YouTube channel because I know he has a YouTube following. And I watched it, and it was like really cool because this guy's like showing you stuff that's going on in the sun, like you see the solar flares and all the cool stuff, and he does like a 3 or 5 minute video at 6 o'clock every morning. And he's kind of a nice guy and kind of entertaining, and he talks about stuff that I think makes some sense. And he also, of course, studies climate change and kind of goes through this. And he was a researcher, so he's a pretty smart guy, but with a little bit of fun to him as well. So researcher fun, certainly, you know, can respect it. And then, so in my little thing, I would say I could take a 5-minute distraction at 6:30 in the morning because most of the times I was getting up at 6:30 and I needed a little distraction anyway. So I would go to the little channel, suspiciousobservers.org. And by the way, I am a subscriber to his Fly on the Wall thing. He's got a premium service, I think, for $3.99 a month or something like that, or $29 a year. I don't remember what I do. So I subscribe to it anyway. And he talks about stuff. And he's a smart guy, so he's kind of scientist, kind of research. But he also did something where he underestimated something. So he wanted to do something with his mobile observatory. He was a little bit of a dreamer, and well, still is, of course. And he was married, and then he decided that he was going to do some fundraising through you know, the GoFundMe thing, Kickstarter. So he did a Kickstarter campaign, and he wanted to raise $35,000 for an RV that he could trick out as a mobile observatory. So remember, I'm watching this, right? So this is kind of cool, admiring people that go out there and kind of like, this is my dream, and I'm going to go for it. And within a day and a half, he hit his goal of $35,000 for his mobile observatory. And then, of course, it was kind of fun because you realize they're going to run across the challenges associated with that. Remember, he's never done this before. So an RV, I don't know if he ever drove one, then he's going to trick it out with all this mobile observatory stuff, and he was going to go on the road. And it was kind of neat because, you know, of course, you're running across all the different obstacles, which you ultimately know he's going to face. Certain things didn't work, and certain other things didn't work, and blah, blah, blah. But I think the thing that he really wasn't planning on was the idea if you take your wife in an RV around the world, maybe she's going to have a baby. So then she, so he kind of cut some of his mobile observatory thing short, if you know what I mean, because he had to deal with the baby. But it was kind of fun, chasing someone's dreams. So it's a good thing to watch, number one, because you can watch somebody that's an entrepreneur that has that idea, and he does really cool things. But it was just like a really great example of sometimes you're looking for something, you find something else, and that something else works better. So, and maybe we're just creative, like, so you can do those types of things. But just a few minutes before this little thing that I got on over here, somebody sent me something. I had to go look at it, which brought me to a YouTube and was a related video. And then I saw something from Jim Carrey, and I like Jim Carrey because I had younger children when he was younger. So like Dumb and Dumber is a movie that I watched, and all the other cool stuff that Jim Carrey did with some things. And Dumb and Dumber is like one of the things that we talk about relative to our business, Harry and Lloyd. But so I like Jim Carrey kind of like as a comedian. I'm not really sure of him as a political guy, but he did a speech on 2014 at MUM, which stands for some kind of management university. He did the commencement speech. So if you ever get a chance and you can remember, watch it on YouTube. It was really, well, I was just 3/4 of the way done it. But I'm like, wow, what a great inspirational Jim Carrey speech. And you hear about like the stupid stuff that he does sometimes with gun control or whatever, some of the stupid stuff that he might have said. But wow, this guy's kind of like really deep, and he's like really he really had some really, really, really good stuff. I don't want to say really too many times, but there were some really good things that Jim Carrey had done. So I allow myself the focus of the keep it simple circle. So I know what I have to do, and I'm not going to get distracted, but then I also know that, you know what, I want to play. So I just play, and then I can wind myself in, because when I'm playing, I never know what I'm going to find. And that happens more frequently than you can ever imagine. Now, it could be that maybe I just amuse myself. Or it could also be that I can make just about anything else work, because, I used to play with blocks when I was a kid, so you learn how to build stuff with blocks. But also the thing is, I think maybe also you probably are the same way too. You can apply the principles that you learn somewhere else towards your business, so you can kind of make a lot of things fit. So Jim Carrey, 2014 commencement speech, Ben Davidson, suspiciousobservers.org. These are things that I think can also enhance your intellect. And then, of course, and I'll just leave it at this, there's another one, which, by the way, is harvardjustice.org. Harvard, like the school, justice.org. Michael Sandel did a college course at Harvard University. And I don't remember when I started watching it, but I started watching it as a result of something. And it was a really, 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 so I said really too many times, it was a really great presentation. And what I have found is when I exercise my mind, then I exercise my mind, and a lot of the principles, because I'm kind of tuned into this MLM home-based business thing, a lot of the things that he says, I'm like, I get it. Like, I get the lesson, and then I also get the connection, and I'm going to be able to use that. So there's a lot of good things out there that if you kind of like, if your brain is tuned on to the MLM home business, self-development kind of, like if your connection is kind of like tapped into that, and then you hear some other really cool stuff, then you can apply these things in your business to your advantage, which takes a little bit more of a level of sophistication, but you guys have it because you're here. But you can deal with it, and then you can kind of customize it for how it fits inside your business. So just a couple of tidbits of some stuff. So the KISC, K-I-S-C principle, we even did a movie on it. So if you go inside your LMS and then go to training, and then look on the left-hand side of the training movies, you'll see the KISC movie, and you'll see we even did it so you can kind of draw it out on your own. And one of these days, when I really want to make a lot of money, just like Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield did Chicken Soup of the Soul and Chicken Soup of the Everything, one of these days, somebody's either going to take my philosophy or I'll go do it, but I'm going to do a Chicken Soup of the Soul kind of thing, but we're going to call it KISC, because plumbers have the half a dozen things that they need to do. Teachers have those half a dozen things in their KISC circle. So KISC circles are in everything. Like you have a KISC circle if you're going to be a dog groomer. You have a KISC circle if you're going to be a network marketer. You have a KISC circle if you're going to be a parent. So there's a small concentrated things of activities that if you just keep it simple, circle it. So, and I don't think I could make it into a book. I think we could make it into a pamphlet, maybe certainly a sheet of paper, certainly a topic. but everybody has a KISC. So my techie guys have a KISC circle, so I always talk to my techie guys about what's inside your circle to make sure they're doing the right things. You know, programmers have their KISC circle. Brand new people have a certain KISC circle, the activities you have to focus on, so that KISC, keep it simple circle, and then you can coin the phrase, it's in my circle or it ain't in my circle. Okay, so on that note, I think I'm done. Anybody, any questions, anything?
Peter, I had a question. I had a question from the Building Fortunes radio.
Okay.
I went out there, and the picture that you showed us how to get on there, and I went out. It didn't quite look the same. I listened to a couple of them, but can you show us again how to to look somebody up in particular or get to directly to something? What
you do is there's a couple of ways you can do it.
Okay.
We use the platform of Blog Talk Radio. So you can always find stuff on Blog Talk Radio if you want. But what we do is we do it on Building Fortunes Radio. So I'm going to pull up a browser. Let me erase my drawings. So we go buildingfortunesradio.com. And you got a couple of different ways you can pull this up. You could just scroll down and see the most recent shows. So
this is directly Building Fortunes Radio.
Buildingfortunesradio.com.
Okay.
So you can scroll down, and what we do is we give everybody a square. I call them squares. I'm going to come up with a better name, but everybody's a little square. And like this one is on MLM After Hours. This one's on Dr. Jerry Brown. This is one I do over here. We have one for the mentoring mindset. There's the MLM After Hours again. So there's like 3 across. And you can click on it. You can listen to whichever one you want. This is like the MLMIA. And that's one way to find it. Another way is over here. You can do shows by name. So if you're looking for, you know, here, let's use John Luke. John Luke's doing a show. So he's going to be over here. We'll click on this. And I know Jeffrey's always fixing this. Sometimes he forgets, but you should see a Jean-Luc segment down here as soon as he's done. He's working on some stuff right now because what's happening is it's getting big and it's getting unruly. But if you scroll down here, you'll see Jean-Luc eventually when it's there. So then you can just click on that show, and it'll show you all the different things. Like this is the one that we did over here with Renelli Williams, and we did a couple of shows. And then once they're here, you can share them on your Facebook page, tweet them to somebody else, share them on Google+. And right over here, when you click on this, it'll open up a little bit further where you can actually see the page or actually see the link. So there's a way for you to click on the link, and it'll show you the link over here as well. Oh, right over here, download MP3. You can download it if you wanted to, or you can right-click and you can actually copy the link and then be able to send it to somebody else as well.
Okay.
So the simplest way to do it is go to buildingfortunesradio.com.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the simplest way to do it. Then for you, if you said, Peter, can I do an episode? The answer is, of course, Sharon, let's go. So we could do one for you. Like tonight I'm doing one for the guys from Cashback 20. And then Jean-Luc is doing his with me on Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And then we have like Scott Johnson and some other guys. Those are like the questionable anti-MLMer guys who have really concerns. We do that one. I think we even made his own show. So like say, for instance, I'm going to go over here for a second, shows by name. I'm going to come up to this one. Scott Johnson on the radio show. Scott Johnson is a guy that actually was sued by Amway for stuff. So he talks about his Amway lawsuit. And he's got a lot of really cool stuff inside here. He talks about the Amway tool scam. And a lot of people don't realize that in network marketing, a lot of people or companies make money on the tools. So like if you're at Amway, you're buying these $7 DVDs, you know, your upline is forcing you, pushing you, pressuring you, making you feel like you're disloyal if you're not buying X amount of these DVDs or CDs. And what they don't really tell you is that the reason why they want you to buy all those DVDs is because they're all making money on the DVDs. And then the stories that they're telling about how much money they're making is, you know, the illusion is this with Amway, but the reality is it's not. They're making a teeny-weeny check on Amway, and they're using Amway as the platform to be able to push all these DVDs, and they're making more money on the tools than they are making on Amway. But they're not telling you that.
Right.
So he was somebody who worked with Amway for like 16 years, and his last few of them were trying to identify that, you know, this is wrong. So that's why he calls it the Amway Tool Scam. So he's got a website, stoptheamwaytoolscam.wordpress.com. He was actually sued by Amway and won, and has a unique position where he could say a lot of things and has some boundaries, and they can't sue him again. So he's one of the few people on the planet who basically has an Amway vaccination. Like, he can't get infected by them again. So he goes out there and spreads the word. Yeah. So it's good stuff. And then there's some of the other critics. There's Robert Fitzpatrick, who's a real bad, he's a really nasty MLM critic. He thinks all MLMs should be going away. And I think you need to listen to, you know, so Robert, why do you think that? So I interviewed him. You know, why do you think all MLMs are really bad and they should go away? And what you probably find out through my little interview is that I didn't dishonor his claims. But when he says, well, I don't know anybody that's actually making money selling the product, and I'd say, but I do. He said, well, I don't. I said, I know, Robert, you know, you're the expert, but I do. I mean, I could rattle them off. I know a lot of people that actually make a good living selling the product. So your contention that nobody can make a living selling the product kind of falls flat, because just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean they don't exist. So it's kind of neat to be able to hear those different things. So you can hear those things by me doing some interviews with some of these people. But some of them, you know, they have some really good things. So when we talk about VEMA, we talk about the challenges that VEMA has with income claims, with the company president, the company owner, BK Barreco, allowing some of the things to have happened. And some people, you know, they try to brush it under the carpet like, well, you know, he really didn't know. I'm like, well, didn't they use his jet? Like, like when his jet is in the movie, like, how can you say he didn't know? You know? When he's hugging the guy, you know, and doing all the love and stuff, you know, how can you not know? Like, come on, man. Of course he knew. Of course he got out of control, you know. When he hired Anthony Powell, who was the guy who did the tools scam with Herbalife, when Herbalife said no more, you can't do any tools, and Anthony Powell comes over and works with you, VEMA, and you say, well, I can't control my distributors. That's not a, you can't say that as a company owner. That's not a valid excuse. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we talked about those types of issues on those radio shows. So, which is somewhat unfavorable for some people, but it's the reality. Like, come on, man. You can do a little bit better than that. Of course you knew that you were making big income claims. They were on your jet, you know? You know, of course. You know, come on. Like, we're not all that dumb. Like, we're all not that dumb. You know? So it's kind of interesting to hear. But
I listened to a couple of them because I just kind of wanted to see how they worked, and the two that I listened to were really quite different. Mm-hmm. One was by the Han. He sold the gold.
LB. Yeah, LB Hassan.
And a lot of it, I mean, he did some talking, but you were an aggressive interviewer, I guess, for lack of a better term. The other one I listened to, I just picked it because as I was scrolling by, it said something, she was in health stuff, which is my interest. So I listened to her, and she like talked nonstop, and you hardly got a word in.
Yeah.
It was really two different exposures for me.
Yeah, they're good. They're dynamic. They're all different, right? Just like kids, like you treat them different ways. Yeah, I think one of the really, really good ones that we've ever done was LB Hassan on his very first one. It was the very first one that we ever did, and it was just about his experiences with network marketing. That was a really nice one.
I'll look for that.
Yeah, it was the LB Hassan one, and it was really nice.
Okay.
And then, Jean-Luc, when I know it's up there, just I don't know if Jeffrey has the banner up yet because we're dealing with that techie stuff. But Jean-Luc's on Sunday was really a good one as well. The one we did the previous Friday, because he told a little bit about his story, where he came from France, and when he came from France, he didn't even know the language. And you talk about a guy that actually took some risks, and kind of overcome those obstacles. So you listen to a guy, he moves, he comes over here. The rest of his story is, when he comes, he goes through a divorce. So here he is, a brand new, a guy coming over here in the United States, and then all of a sudden he has some personal challenges. He's got language challenges. He's got personal challenges, all that sort of stuff, and still figures it out anyway. So you just hear those stories and you say, boy, that's a really inspirational story about what it's like to really have some challenges and still be able to make it. And
this is my story.
Right, yeah. And then another one was like Jody Bear is a great example, and I get this one. So Jody Bear was working with Vima, and I did a radio show with Jody Bear, which we took down, because on Saturday we do the radio show, right? On Monday, the company gets closed down. On Tuesday, she calls me because the next Saturday is the event we were promoting for her. So she's like, what do I do? So we do this really great radio show promoting her event. And then, it's up there. I'm pushing buttons, and we're getting it promoted all over the place. All of a sudden, the phone call comes like, what do I do? I'm like, well, I guess we take down the radio show because you're not going to be running that event. And she's like, oh, gosh, am I going to get that? Like, and then, the drama starts. Like, oh, my gosh, the company shut down. I need that check. She was waiting for a $7,000 check.
Oh, my gosh.
$7,000. And what, the rest of the story is, she's an amazing woman, but her husband was an amazing writer, but had a really horrible car accident. So she really had to pick up the pace, and she worked her butt off to become successful in Vima, only to find out that the company's closed. So literally speaking, she goes to work, like right after that. She's like, what do I do, Peter? And I said, well, I don't know. Go figure it out. So she goes and figures out. She does some interviews. She wound up joining a company called Zija. And within the first 8 or 10 weeks, she's got her income where it needs to be. She's on the leaderboard, and she's also just qualified for a brand new Mercedes.
I think that was the one I listened. That was the one I listened to.
Yes, and it's amazing because you just say, "Wow!" A lot of other people would be kind of curled up in a little fetal position, and she didn't skip a lick. I mean, she probably, there's a little bit of shell shock, but she went to work, and she found a wonderful company, and she's loving it, and doing a really great job, and that was really inspiring. So
good.
And she's she's fun, and you're right with her. I just have to basically just hold on to the phone because she's like, she'll go for it.
Yeah, she did.
But she's so inspirational. She's really got a great message, and she's very inspirational. And
Peter, you know what is what? No, okay, go ahead. You know what is good with the company I work with? Even if the company is shut down, we already have the money because we are paid in 3 minutes. The company didn't keep them. Because of that, I say this is a security for us because even if they shut down, we already have the money.
Right. Yeah. Jean-Luc's company has a very state-of-the-art compensation plan where literally, I mean, you're paid within minutes of the person joining.
Or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You have not finished to talk with a person because they sign, you talk a little bit, and suddenly changing up the money in your account. 3 minutes after.
It's amazing.
Only company doing that.
I don't think there's any other company. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. So it's
literally the only and first company who do that because he's a guy, a high-tech guy who developed all of this. And even if you make money all around the world, meaning you can make a sale yourself, you pay in 3 minutes, but somebody can make a sale in France or in Taiwan or wherever. 3 minutes after, I have the money in my bank account.
Yep, that's incredible. So great stories. Yeah, so Sharon, there's a lot of really good, there's a lot of diversity on Building Fortunes Radio. So, you know, I like to celebrate other people's successes as well. So when you hear about LB Hassan, he talks about the people in Nigeria that have made a difference, and you hear about some of the other ones, you know, just they're really heartwarming stories. And then, of course, you have Jim Turner. So Jim Turner has Citizens for Health, and he talks about vaccinations and mandates and mercury and what's happening with GMOs. So you get, you know, it's a nice variety of stuff. So that's why I enjoy building it. So that's why we call it Building Fortunes. We're building that platform for a little bit of everything. Okay, on that note, matter of fact, I got to get a radio show out of the way, so I'm going to go and I'm going to shut us off in a second. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Hopefully I was able to answer that question for you, Sharon.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. All right, so let me stop.